Honesty, a straight and clear gaze. Picture this: a small child standing right in front of you. Their little face lifted, their eyes wide open, and they're looking straight into yours. No hesitation. No fear. No attempt to hide anything. Just a gaze that is pure, direct, almost piercing in its innocence. Have you ever felt that moment? When a child stares at you without blinking, without judgment, without masks, it can feel disarming. Because in their eyes, there's no performance. No game of pretending. Just presence. Just truth. There's a saying that goes, when we are honest, our eyes become mirrors reflecting the soul. And if you think about it, it's true, isn't it? When someone speaks with sincerity, whether it's a friend admitting a mistake or a stranger sharing a vulnerable story, you can feel it. Not only in their words, but in the way their eyes meet yours. Their gaze is open, steady, and clear, almost like a window you can see right through. But the opposite is also true. You've probably seen it before: someone who avoids your eyes while talking. Someone whose gaze flickers, shifts, or feels heavy with something unspoken. You can't always explain why, but you sense it. The eyes reveal what the words try to conceal. So here's the question: why does honesty change our gaze? Why does truth make the eyes clear, while lies make them clouded? Let's pause here and make it personal. Think of a moment in your own life when you couldn't quite meet someone's eyes. Maybe you told a half-truth to protect yourself. Maybe you carried a secret you weren't ready to share. Do you remember that tightness in your chest? That subtle urge to look away? That heaviness in your gaze, as though your own eyes carried the weight of what you were hiding? Now, contrast that with another moment, when you finally told the truth. Maybe you admitted a mistake. Maybe you confessed something you'd been carrying for a long time. At first, it felt scary, raw, even vulnerable. But afterward, didn't you also feel lighter? Didn't your eyes feel freer, no longer weighed down by the burden of pretending? This is what honesty does. It doesn't just live in our words. It radiates through our entire being. It shows up in the way we walk into a room, the way our shoulders relax, the way our breath flows more easily, and yes, the way our eyes look into the world. The Buddha once taught about right speech, which includes speaking the truth with kindness and clarity. But honesty goes deeper than speech. It is about aligning your whole life with truth. When you live honestly, you don't need to rehearse your story. You don't have to cover your tracks. You don't carry the silent fear of being exposed. Your presence becomes simpler, lighter. And your eyes, they reflect that freedom. Maybe that's why children strike us so profoundly. They remind us of what it feels like to be unfiltered, to look directly at life without disguise. But as we grow, we learn to shield ourselves. We build masks. We tell small lies to avoid embarrassment, to protect our image, to control how others see us. And with each layer of pretending, something precious gets buried: the natural transparency of our soul. Yet here's the hopeful part: it's not lost forever. Honesty is like polishing a mirror. At first, the glass may be dusty, blurred, or even covered with grime. But the more we wipe away the layers of deception, the clearer it becomes. Each act of truthfulness removes a stain, a smudge. Slowly, the mirror shines again. Slowly, the eyes regain their clarity. I sometimes think of honesty as a kind of quiet courage. Not the loud, dramatic courage of battle, but the gentle bravery of showing up as you are, without disguise. And when you practice it, your gaze changes. People notice it. They feel safer around you, because your eyes don't dart away. They feel more seen, because your eyes don't hide. So let me ask you, what do your eyes reveal today? If someone looked into them right now, what would they see? Would they sense openness? Or would they feel that you're holding something back? This is not a question of judgment. We all struggle with it. But it is a gentle reminder: the eyes can't lie. They show what the heart carries. And so, honesty is not just a moral rule, not just about being good. It's about freedom. It's about no longer carrying the burden of falsehood. It's about walking through the world with eyes that can meet anyone, without shame, without masks, without fear. In the chapters to come, we will explore how honesty unfolds in different areas of life, how being truthful with ourselves, with our words, with our relationships, can change not only how others see us, but how we see ourselves. Because in the end, to live honestly is to reclaim that childlike gaze, the gaze that is straight, clear, and unafraid. The gaze that says, This is me, and I have nothing to hide. Being honest with yourself. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man who lived much of his life running from his own fears. Every time anxiety arose, he found an excuse. Every time sadness surfaced, he buried it under work, entertainment, or endless distractions. He told himself, "I'm fine. I'm strong. I don't need to feel this." To the outside world, he seemed confident, even successful. But inside, his heart was unsettled, like a restless sea that never found calm. One day, tired of carrying that inner weight, he sat down in silence. No phone, no television, no escape. Just him and his breath. At first, what rose up was uncomfortable. Fear, doubt, memories he had tried to avoid. His instinct was to get up and run, to distract himself again. But something in him whispered, "Stay." And so, for the first time, he didn't run. He simply sat there, breathing, and allowed himself to look directly at his fear, to acknowledge it, to name it. And in that moment of raw honesty, something shifted. The fear didn't disappear overnight, but the weight of denial began to lift. This is what it means to be honest with yourself. Not to pretend you're always okay. Not to keep covering your wounds with masks of strength, but to admit, even quietly to your own heart, "Yes, I'm afraid. Yes, I'm hurting. Yes, this is my truth." The Buddha once said, "Be a lamp unto yourself. Be your own island." And what does that mean? It means we cannot build a life of peace if we keep lying to ourselves. We can only find true stability when we dare to face ourselves as we are, our light, our shadow, our strength, our weakness. Ask yourself, how many times have you told others you're fine when you're not? How often have you forced a smile while inside you were breaking? And here's the deeper question. When was the last time you admitted the truth, at least to yourself? We often think of honesty as something we owe to others. But the deepest dishonesty begins within. Self-deception is subtle. It's pretending we are not jealous when we are, pretending we are not tired when our body is begging for rest, pretending we don't care when, in truth, we do. Each little lie to ourselves creates a crack in our inner foundation. And over time, those cracks widen until our whole being feels unstable. But when we stop running, when we dare to sit down with ourselves, even in silence, we begin to repair that foundation. Meditation, in its essence, is not about escaping reality. It is about looking straight into it, about seeing clearly what is there, without filters. Sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it is always freeing. Think of it like this. A mirror covered in dust cannot reflect your face. Denial and self-deception are that dust. But when you wipe it away with honesty, the reflection becomes clear again. You see yourself as you are, not as you wish to appear. And that clarity is the beginning of peace. I can tell you from my own journey, there were times when I pretended to be strong, even cheerful, while inside I was exhausted. I thought ignoring my pain would make it disappear. But it didn't. It only grew louder, waiting to be acknowledged. It was only when I started sitting quietly, allowing myself to name what I felt without judgment, that my heart softened. And with that softness came peace. Being honest with yourself is not weakness. It is courage. Because it takes bravery to face your own reflection without filters. And here's the paradox. When you stop lying to yourself, you stop fearing what others see in you. Your gaze becomes calmer, steadier. Your eyes no longer shift with hidden unrest. They begin to carry a quiet peace. So, let me ask you, what truth within yourself have you been avoiding? Is there a fear you keep pushing down? A sadness you pretend isn't there? A dream you silence because it feels too risky? Imagine how it would feel if, just for today, you allowed yourself to acknowledge it. Not to fix it, not to solve it, but simply to admit it. To breathe with it. To say to yourself, "This is my truth right now, and that's okay." When we are honest with ourselves, our eyes reflect it. They no longer dart nervously or hide in distraction. They become grounded, steady, at ease. And people notice. They may not know why, but they will feel it. A gaze that is no longer restless, but calm. That is the gift of self-honesty. A gift that begins within, but radiates outward, changing not only the way you see yourself, but the way the world sees you. Because the truth is this, a person who is honest with themselves carries a peace that cannot be faked. And that peace shines through the eyes, straight, clear, and unshaken. Honesty in speech. Let me share a story that has been told in Buddhist circles for centuries. There was once a young novice monk, a smearer, who made a mistake during his chores in the monastery. Perhaps he broke a simple rule, perhaps he damaged something by accident. It wasn't a great sin, but it weighed on his heart. When his teacher asked what had happened, fear rose up in him. Instead of admitting the truth, he told a small lie. Just a little twist of words to cover up his error. On the surface, it worked. The teacher accepted his answer and moved on. But the novice didn't feel relieved. In fact, he felt heavier. His heart carried a weight far greater than the mistake itself. That small lie followed him into meditation, into his studies, into the silence of the night. And soon, he realized something. The lie had become a prison. So the next day, he went back to his teacher. With eyes lowered and voice trembling, he confessed, "Master, I was not truthful yesterday. I was afraid to admit my mistake, but it has made my heart restless. I cannot carry this lie any longer." The teacher listened quietly, then simply smiled. "The mistake was small," he said, "but the courage to tell the truth is great. What weighs you down is never the act itself, but the lie that hides it. From now on, let your words be true, and you will find freedom." That story touches something in all of us. Haven't we all, at some point, told a lie to avoid blame, to protect our image, or to escape discomfort? And haven't we also felt the silent burden it leaves behind? The restless mind, the uneasy heart, the way our words echo inside us like stones we cannot digest. The Buddha taught right speech, samvir with macron, as one of the Eightfold Path practices. And central to right speech is truthfulness. Not because telling the truth is always easy, but because truth liberates. Falsehood might protect us in the moment, but it chains us over time. Truth might sting in the beginning, but it heals in the long run. Think of it this way. Words are like seeds. When you plant lies, you must constantly tend them. Remember what you said, cover one with another, protect them from being exposed. It becomes exhausting. But when you plant truth, you don't need to guard it. It grows naturally, without effort, because it is aligned with reality. Let me ask you something personal. Has there ever been a time you lied to spare someone's feelings, only to realize later that the dishonesty caused more harm than the truth ever would have? Or maybe you told a small lie at work, and suddenly you were forced to keep building on it, feeling the stress multiply with each layer? We often think of lies as shields, but in truth, they are weights. They don't protect us. They trap us. When we practice truthful speech, we are not just being moral, we are setting ourselves free. Honest words clear the fog between people. They build trust. They make our relationships real. And most importantly, they keep our own hearts light. Of course, truth doesn't mean being harsh. The Buddha emphasized that truth must be spoken with kindness, at the right time, in a way that is beneficial. There is a difference between honesty and brutality. If truth is a medicine, then compassion is the way it is given. Medicine heals, but only when administered with care. I remember once, I avoided telling a close friend how his behavior had hurt me. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want to seem critical. But the silence grew heavier each day. Finally, I told him, gently, but honestly. He was hurt at first, of course. But over time, that conversation deepened our friendship. Because instead of a wall of silence and pretense, we had truth. And truth, even when uncomfortable, became the ground of trust. This is why the Buddha said truthful speech is liberating. Lies enslave, truth frees. And if we think about it, honesty in speech is not just about others, it's also about our own peace of mind. When your words are aligned with your heart, there is no inner division. Your eyes, your voice, your being, they all move in the same direction. There's a calmness in that unity. So let me invite you to reflect. Where in your life are your words not aligned with truth? Where are you carrying the weight of unspoken honesty, or the burden of words that were not real? And what might happen if you chose to speak truth, not recklessly, but gently, with courage? Remember this, truthful words may cut in the short term, but they heal in the long term. A lie may soothe in the moment, but it wounds in the long run. Which one would you rather carry? The young novice monk discovered this truth. His small lie brought heavy suffering. His honest confession brought lightness. And the same is true for us. In the end, words are not just sounds, they are bridges. And only truth can build a bridge strong enough to carry the weight of a real connection. So speak honestly. Speak kindly. And let your words be not just sounds in the air, but liberations of the heart. Because in honesty, both speaker and listener find freedom. Honesty in action. There's a simple story I once heard, and though it's ordinary, it carries a deep truth. In a small village, there was a farmer who sold vegetables in the local market. Every morning, he would gather what he had grown, wash them carefully, and place them neatly on his cart. The other sellers in the market had a habit. They would mix the fresh vegetables with a few that were wilted or spoiled, hiding the imperfections under layers of green. Customers often couldn't tell at first, but when they brought the vegetables home, disappointment followed. The farmer, however, refused to do this. He never mixed the bad with the good. If the leaves were wilted, he set them aside. If something was not fresh, he didn't sell it. At first, people thought he was too naive, maybe even foolish. After all, wasn't he losing money by not selling everything he could? But something began to happen. Day by day, people noticed the difference. When they bought from him, they never felt cheated. They began to trust him. And trust, once planted, grows stronger than any crop. Soon, his little stall was the busiest in the market. Customers came not just for the vegetables, but for the peace of mind that came with knowing they were treated honestly. This is the power of honesty in action. We often think of honesty as something that lives in our words. But in truth, it is our actions that speak the loudest. Words can be polished, rehearsed, even deceiving. But actions, they reveal the true nature of our hearts. The Buddha taught about karma, the law of cause and effect. Every action is a seed, and every seed will grow into fruit. When our actions are rooted in honesty, they plant seeds of trust, respect, and goodness. These seeds may take time to grow, but when they ripen, they bring blessings not only for ourselves but for everyone around us. Think about it in your own life. Have you ever dealt with someone who acted with integrity, even when no one was watching? Maybe a coworker who gave credit where it was due instead of taking it for themselves. Or a business owner who didn't take advantage of you when they easily could have. Didn't their actions leave an impression on you? Didn't it create a quiet respect that lingers even years later? Now contrast that with the times you've been deceived. Maybe you bought something that wasn't as promised, or trusted someone who acted only for their own gain. The sting of dishonesty doesn't fade quickly, does it? It erodes trust, and once trust is broken, it takes a long time to rebuild. That's why honest actions are so powerful. They don't just create results in the present moment, they shape the future. They carve a path that others can walk on with confidence. But here's something we often overlook. Honesty in action is not always about grand gestures. More often, it shows up in the small, daily choices. The decision not to cut corners at work. The discipline to keep promises even when it's inconvenient. The choice to admit a mistake instead of covering it up. These small acts may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, they build the foundation of our character. I once heard a saying, "Character is what you do when no one is watching." That's where honesty truly lives, not in the eyes of others, but in the quiet space where only we know what we did or didn't do. In Buddhism, it is said that every action, no matter how small, leaves an imprint on the mind and on the world. When we act dishonestly, we create ripples of harm, even if we think no one noticed. But when we act honestly, we generate ripples of light. Those ripples reach further than we often imagine. Let me give you an example. A teacher once said that when we act with integrity, even in private, we train our own mind to be trustworthy. And when the mind knows it can trust itself, it becomes calm. There's no inner conflict, no gnawing guilt. That inner peace radiates outward, through our eyes, our words, our presence. So honesty in action is not just about reputation or how others see us. It's about building an inner home where we can rest without fear. It's about knowing that, at the end of the day, we didn't betray ourselves. And when we live this way, others notice. Just like the villagers notice the farmer's vegetables, people sense the quality of our presence. They feel safe around us. They know our actions are steady, our path is clear. The Buddha once said that truth and honesty are like a lamp that cannot be hidden. Even if you place it under a basket, the light will find a way out. Honest actions are like that lamp. They shine, even without our intention. They light the path for us and for others. So let me ask you, where in your life are your actions not fully aligned with truth? Maybe it's at work, where it feels easier to cut corners. Maybe it's in relationships, where you avoid certain responsibilities. Or maybe it's in your own habits, the small promises you break to yourself. What would happen if, like the farmer, you chose to act honestly, even when it costs you in the short term? Could it be that in the long term, you would reap a harvest far greater than what you lost? Because here's the truth: honest actions may not always bring immediate reward, but they always plant lasting seeds. And those seeds will grow into trust, respect, and peace, the kind of wealth no one can take away. So let your actions be clear. Let them be true. Let them be the light that guides you and those around you. Because honesty in action is more than just morality. It is the compass that keeps us steady, the lamp that lights the road, and the seed that grows into the harvest of a good life. Honesty in relationships. There's a story that stays with me, not because it is dramatic, but because it is deeply human. A father once sat with his young son late at night. The boy was struggling with school, afraid of failing, afraid of disappointing the people he loved. He asked his father, "Dad, have you ever been afraid?" The father paused. He could have chosen the usual answer, "No, son, I'm strong, I've never been afraid." But instead, he looked straight into his child's eyes and said, "Yes, I'm afraid too. I've been afraid of failure many times. Even now, there are moments I fear I won't be good enough. But I've learned to keep walking anyway." Something changed in the boy at that moment. He didn't see his father as weaker for admitting his fear. He saw him as more real, more trustworthy, more human. And strangely, that truth gave him courage. That is the power of honesty in relationships. We often believe that love means protecting others by hiding our vulnerability. Parents think they must always appear strong for their children. Partners think they must never show doubt, weakness, or fear. Friends sometimes pretend everything is fine because they don't want to burden each other. But the truth is, when we put on masks for too long, our relationships become hollow. We may appear strong, but we become untouchable. We may appear confident, but no one can really connect with us. Honesty, in this sense, is not just about telling the truth. It's about daring to be seen as we really are. It's about saying, "Yes, I am afraid. Yes, I have failed. Yes, I don't know the answer right now." The Buddha once said that true compassion is not pretending to be invincible, but allowing the truth of our hearts to be seen. This is what opens the door for genuine connection. Think about it. When was the last time someone opened up to you honestly? Not with a performance, not with a facade, but with raw sincerity. Maybe a friend admitted they were struggling with loneliness. Or a partner confessed their fears about the future. Didn't that moment, as tender as it was, bring you closer together? Didn't it make the relationship more alive? That's the paradox of honesty in relationships. The very thing we think will push people away, our fears, our flaws, our wounds, is often what draws them nearer. Because when someone dares to be real, it gives us permission to be real too. And in that space of shared humanity, love deepens. But let's also be honest here. Being open is not always easy. It feels risky. It feels like standing without armor. And in a world where we are often judged by appearances, that can be terrifying. Yet, I've come to realize this. When we hide behind perfection, we may gain admiration, but we lose intimacy. People can respect an image, but they can only love a person. And love grows in the soil of honesty. In Buddhist teachings, there is a profound truth. Compassion and honesty are intertwined. If we are not honest, our compassion becomes a performance. It looks kind, but it lacks depth. True compassion arises when we are brave enough to say, "Here I am, imperfect but sincere. I see you, imperfect but worthy." In that meeting of hearts, something sacred happens. Fear loses its grip. Loneliness dissolves. Trust blooms. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine a couple. One partner makes a mistake. Maybe they forgot something important. Maybe they acted carelessly. They could cover it up, make excuses, or shift the blame. And for a while, the relationship would remain peaceful on the surface. But deep down, trust begins to erode. Now imagine instead, they say, "I'm sorry. I was careless. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I see that I did. Please forgive me." It may sting in the moment, but that honesty is like a balm. It heals. It allows the relationship to move forward stronger, not weaker. That's why honesty in love is not about avoiding pain. It's about choosing a deeper, lasting healing over a temporary comfort. I often wonder, how many relationships fall apart not because love disappears, but because honesty disappears. How many families drift apart because parents and children never dared to share their true feelings? How many friendships fade because both sides only showed their polished surface, never their authentic soul? And I wonder, too, what would happen if we dared to live differently? What if we chose honesty, even when it's uncomfortable? What if we allowed our loved ones to see not just our strength, but also our trembling hands, our uncertain hearts? Wouldn't that honesty be the very bridge that carries us closer together? So here is the heart of it. To be honest in relationships is to love with courage. It is to say, I trust you enough to show you who I am. And I love you enough to let you see not just the light, but also the shadows. Because real love is not built on illusions. It's built on truth. And when truth is present, even in fear, even in imperfection, the heart can finally rest. The father who told his son, "Yes, I am afraid," didn't weaken his bond with the boy. He strengthened it. Because love is not about pretending to be unbreakable. It is about choosing to be unbreakably real. And when our hearts dare to be real, they touch other hearts. Sparkles, so remember this. Honesty in relationships doesn't mean we will never stumble. It doesn't mean we will never hurt each other. But it does mean that when we fall together. When we heal together. And in that shared journey, love becomes not a fragile glass that must be protected at all costs, but a living flame that grows brighter with every breath of truth. Heart to heart. That's where honesty leads us. Honesty and courage. There is a moment in the life of the Buddha that has always moved me. After his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he could have chosen silence. He could have kept his realization private, enjoying the peace he had found. But instead, he walked back into the world, not only to speak with those eager to learn, but also to share with those who had once doubted him, rejected him, even opposed him. Think about that for a second. How many of us, after discovering a deep truth, would be willing to share it openly, even with people who mocked us before? It takes an extraordinary kind of courage to be that honest, to stand in the light of truth without hiding, without softening, without fear of rejection. And that is what honesty truly requires. Courage. Because honesty is not just about telling the truth when it's easy. It's about telling the truth when it might cost us something, when it might change how others see us, when it might make us vulnerable, when it might lead to consequences we'd rather avoid. Sometimes it's easier to stay quiet, to pretend, to hide behind a mask. But each time we choose to speak with honesty, something inside us shifts. A layer of fear is peeled away. The shell of pretense cracks a little more. And we begin to live lighter, freer. Let me ask you this. Have you ever told a truth that scared you? Maybe you confessed a mistake at work, knowing it could hurt your reputation. Maybe you admitted to a friend that you were struggling, even though you feared they'd see you differently. Maybe you told a loved one something they didn't want to hear, because it mattered more to be real than to be comfortable. Those moments are never easy. Your heart races, your throat tightens, you wonder if silence would have been safer. And yet, after the words leave your lips, haven't you felt a strange kind of relief? A sense of strength, as if a heavy burden has been lifted? That's the paradox. Honesty can make us tremble, but it also makes us strong. Buddhist teachings remind us that truth is not something to hide from. To be honest is to live without running away. The Buddha himself said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Peace does not come from avoiding reality. It comes from facing it. And facing reality, whether within ourselves or in front of others, takes courage. I remember a friend who once told me a story about her childhood. Her family lived through hard times, and one day, she accidentally broke something valuable in the house. She was terrified her father would be angry. She thought about hiding it, pretending it was an accident no one could explain. But instead, she gathered her courage and told the truth. Her father looked at her, silent for a moment, then said, "I'm proud of you. Not because of what happened, but because you dared to tell the truth." That moment shaped her. She told me later that it was the first time she understood that honesty is not about avoiding punishment. It's about building trust, about becoming someone who doesn't have to live in hiding. And isn't that true for all of us? Each time we avoid the truth, we create a shadow inside ourselves, a place where fear can grow. But each time we choose honesty, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's risky, we reclaim a piece of our freedom. Think of honesty like a muscle. The more we practice it, the stronger it becomes. The first time we speak a difficult truth, it feels almost unbearable. The second time, still hard, but lighter. Over time, we realize we are no longer afraid of being seen as we are. We are no longer prisoners of what others may think. Courage, then, is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to walk through fear with truth in our hands. The Buddha did not wait for universal approval before he taught. He did not filter his words to please every ear. He spoke because the truth mattered more than his comfort. And in doing so, he gave humanity a gift that has lasted over 2,500 years. What about us? What truths are we still hiding? What words remain unspoken because of fear? What masks do we still wear in order to appear safe? And more importantly, what freedom might be waiting for us if we finally dared to speak? I sometimes think about honesty like peeling an onion. Each time we reveal another layer of truth, we cry a little. It stings, it's raw. But each layer brings us closer to the core, closer to the essence of who we really are. And once we arrive there, there's no more need for hiding. Life feels simpler. Relationships feel cleaner. Our own hearts feel lighter. Because here's the secret: honesty doesn't just free us from others, it frees us from ourselves. So maybe today, we can take one small step. Not the biggest truth, not the heaviest confession. Just one small truth we've been holding back. Tell it gently. Tell it with courage. And notice how the world doesn't collapse. Instead, something inside you begins to expand. And then, step by step, the layers of fear fall away. Sparkles, the heart of this reflection is simple. Every time we dare to be honest, a layer of fear is shed. Every time we speak the truth, we grow braver. And courage, in the end, is not something we are born with. It is something we practice, moment by moment, word by word, truth by truth. Just as the Buddha shared his realization with friend and foe alike, may we too find the strength to live openly. Because honesty is not only a gift we give to others, it is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. Honesty and letting go. There's a quiet kind of strength in being able to say just 3 words, I was wrong. It sounds simple, but if you've ever had to say it, you know how heavy those words can feel on the tongue. Pride resists. Ego whispers, don't admit it. Don't give in. Hold your ground. And yet, when we finally let the words out, something remarkable happens. The weight we were carrying, the tight knot of self-protection, begins to loosen. I once heard a story about a man who had argued fiercely with his friend. For days, he replayed the conversation in his mind, justifying his own words, convincing himself he had been right. But deep down, he knew he wasn't. Finally, one evening, he walked to his friend's house, looked him in the eye, and said, I was wrong. In that moment, the anger dissolved. Not just between them, but inside him. What vanished wasn't only the tension of the conflict. It was the burden of pride. That's the heart of today's reflection: honesty and letting go. Buddhism teaches us the truth of anatta, non-self, or the realization that the I we cling to isn't as solid or important as we think. When we insist, I must be right, I must not lose, we are not defending truth, we are defending an illusion of ego. And here's the paradox: the more tightly we grip that illusion, the heavier life feels. But the moment we dare to admit the truth, that we are imperfect, that we don't always know, that sometimes we are wrong, our grip loosens. The ego steps back. The heart breathes freely. Think about how many arguments in the world could end sooner, how many relationships could heal faster, how many hearts could be lighter, if someone simply had the courage to say, I was wrong. But we resist, don't we? Because admitting fault feels like defeat. We equate being wrong with being weak. Yet in reality, it's the opposite. It takes far more strength to lower our guard and be honest than to cling to a false image of being flawless. Honesty here is not just about facts, it's about humility. It's about daring to show that we are human, that we stumble, that we too can learn. I remember a time in my own life when I held on to pride too long. A small mistake, nothing catastrophic, but instead of admitting it, I tried to justify myself. The harder I defended, the more restless I became. It was like carrying a backpack full of stones that I refused to put down. Finally, I faced it. I admitted I was wrong. And instantly, it was as if the stones vanished. What had seemed unbearable was lifted in a single moment of honesty. Maybe you've had moments like that too. Let me ask you, what are you still carrying today that could be set down with a single act of truth? Sometimes we carry old arguments. Sometimes we carry the shame of a mistake. Sometimes it's the guilt of not being who we said we were. And we carry it because our pride says, don't admit it. Don't surrender. But what if surrender is not losing? What if surrender is exactly how we win? Peace, clarity, freedom. In Buddhism, the teaching of non-self isn't abstract philosophy. It's a mirror for daily life. The I that always needs to be right, always needs to be strong, always needs to be admired, that I is fragile, like glass. It shatters easily. And the more we cling to it, the more we live in fear of cracks. But when we practice honesty, we begin to see, the I is not the center of everything. Life is bigger than our pride. Relationships are more valuable than being right. Peace is more precious than winning. Here's a simple truth. When we hold on to pride, we create distance. When we let it go, we create connection. That's why honesty is such a powerful force in relationships. The moment you admit your mistake, the other person feels your sincerity. Defenses soften. Hearts open. And healing begins. Yes, sometimes the truth stings. But over time, truth heals more deeply than denial ever could. Imagine this. Two people facing each other, both insisting they are right. The space between them is filled with tension, like a rope pulled tight in a tug-of-war. Now imagine one of them simply letting go of the rope. Suddenly, there is no more struggle. The tension disappears. That's what honesty and letting go feels like. It doesn't mean you are less. It means you are free. So what does this look like in our daily lives? Maybe it's telling your partner, I realize I wasn't listening to you. Maybe it's telling your colleague, that was my mistake. Maybe it's telling yourself, I don't have to be perfect. These small acts of truth are powerful. Each one is a release. Each one is a weight lifted. Each one is a step closer to a heart that doesn't have to fight itself anymore. The Buddha once said, there is no fire like passion, no grip like hatred, no snare like folly, no torrent like craving. Pride is part of that snare. It traps us. Honesty cuts the rope. And with that cut, we discover freedom. So here's the closing thought. Honesty is not just about speaking the truth. It's about releasing the grip of pride. When we dare to admit we are wrong, we do not lose face. We lose the burden of defending an illusion. And in losing that burden, we gain peace. The truth, when embraced with humility, is never our enemy. It is our liberation. When we let go of pride, the heart is no longer chained. It is free. And perhaps that is the greatest gift of honesty, not the image we save, but the weight we finally set down. Sparkles when we let go of pride, truth sets the heart free. Honesty and healing. There's a turning point in every healing journey. And most of the time, it doesn't begin with medicine, or therapy, or advice from others. It begins with a single act of honesty. I once heard the story of a man who struggled with alcoholism for years. His family begged him to stop. His friends distanced themselves. His health was crumbling. Yet he kept insisting, I can handle it. I don't have a problem. It was only when he looked in the mirror one morning, exhausted and broken, and whispered to himself, I do have a problem, that everything changed. That confession, as small as it may sound, was the first real step toward recovery. Because healing doesn't start when we cover up the truth. Healing starts when we dare to face it. That's what today's reflection is about, honesty and healing. In Buddhism, there's a teaching called Yatthanatasana, often translated as seeing things as they really are. It's not just philosophy. It's the foundation of transformation. Because you cannot heal what you refuse to see. Think of it this way. If you go to the doctor but lie about your symptoms, how can they help you? The same is true for the soul. If we hide from our wounds, deny our fears, or pretend everything is fine, how can we ever begin to heal? We live in a culture that often rewards pretending. We are told to smile, to say we are okay, to keep it together even when we are breaking inside. But here's the paradox. Pretending to be fine only deepens the wound. Honesty, on the other hand, might sting in the moment, but it opens the door to real healing. Have you ever noticed this in your own life? That moment when you finally admitted to yourself what you were really feeling? Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was burnout. Maybe it was loneliness. And the moment you spoke it, the heaviness began to shift. Not because the problem vanished, but because you stopped fighting reality. Let me share something personal. There was a season in my life when I kept saying yes to everything. Yes to projects, yes to people, yes to responsibilities, even though I was exhausted. I told myself I could manage. I told others I was fine. But inside, I was crumbling. It wasn't until one day, when I broke down and admitted to a close friend, "I'm not okay. I'm overwhelmed," that things started to change. She didn't judge me. She simply listened. And that honesty gave me permission to rest, to seek help, and to heal. Looking back, I realize the lie wasn't in what I told others, it was in what I kept telling myself. And that's often the hardest lie to face. So here's a question for you. What truth are you avoiding right now that, if admitted, might begin your healing? Maybe it's the truth that you're unhappy in your job. Maybe it's the truth that you're carrying unspoken resentment. Maybe it's the truth that you need help with something you can't do alone. Whatever it is, naming it honestly is not weakness. It's strength. Because only when you see clearly can you choose wisely. Buddhism calls this right view. It's part of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view doesn't mean seeing things as you want them to be. It means seeing things as they are. The suffering, the joy, the cracks, the wholeness, all of it. When the alcoholic says, "I have a problem," he steps into right view. When the grieving person says, "I'm hurting," they step into right view. When we admit, "I don't know," or "I need help," we step into right view. And from that place, healing can finally take root. Now, some people fear honesty because they think the truth will crush them. If I admit this, I'll fall apart. If I face this, I won't survive. But here's the paradox. The truth itself is never what destroys us. It's the denial, the pretending, the inner war against reality. That's what eats us alive. Lies corrode the spirit. They force us to live in constant tension, always maintaining a mask. But honesty may hurt at first, but it breathes oxygen into the suffocating parts of the soul. It allows healing to begin. Think about relationships. How many have been broken not by the truth, but by the refusal to speak it? A partner hides their struggles. A friend pretends they're fine. A family member conceals their pain. And in the silence, trust withers. Now imagine instead if they spoke honestly, "I'm struggling. I need you." That moment of truth, though vulnerable, is the seed of connection. It's the place where love and compassion can flow in. Here's a simple image. Think of a wound on the body. If you cover it up and pretend it's not there, it festers. But if you clean it, yes, it stings, and expose it to air, it begins to heal. The soul is no different. Denial festers. Honesty cleanses. So maybe the real courage in life is not pretending we are unbreakable, but admitting where we are broken. Because that's where the light can enter. And maybe the deepest form of compassion is not protecting people from our truth, but allowing them to share in it, so we don't carry our pain alone. Let me leave you with this. The truth will never be what breaks you. The truth, spoken honestly, is what sets the healing in motion. It's the lie, the denial, the mask, that slowly suffocates the soul. When you dare to say, "This is what I'm going through," you are not falling apart. You are falling into reality. And reality is the only place where healing is possible. Sparkle's truth doesn't destroy us. It heals us. It's the lie that quietly kills the soul. Honesty and relationships. There's a saying that relationships are built in years, but they can break in minutes. And more often than not, what cracks them open isn't some dramatic betrayal, but the tiny, almost invisible lies that slowly erode trust. I once heard the story of two close friends. They shared everything, dreams, struggles, even secrets. But then, one of them began telling small lies. Nothing major at first. Just excuses, half-truths, little things to avoid conflict or protect an image. The other friend sensed something was off, but stayed silent. Over time, the unspoken gap widened. The friendship, once strong, fell apart. But here's the powerful twist. Years later, one of them finally confessed. With trembling honesty, he said, "I lied. I was scared you wouldn't accept the real me." And instead of anger, what followed was silence, and then tears. Because in that moment of truth, the wall came down. Honesty became the bridge that allowed the friendship to be rebuilt. This is what we're exploring today: honesty and relationships. Buddhism teaches that sati, mindfulness, and metta, loving kindness, are essential in our human connections. Together, they mean being fully present with one another, without masks, and holding space with compassion. But none of that can truly exist without honesty. Why? Because honesty is the soil where trust grows. And without trust, no relationship, whether friendship, love, or family, can survive for long. Think about it. How many times have you held back your truth in a relationship out of fear? Fear of being judged. Fear of being rejected. Fear of conflict. We convince ourselves, it's just a small lie. But small lies are like hairline cracks in glass. Invisible at first, but with pressure, they spread until the whole thing shatters. Honesty, on the other hand, might feel risky in the short term, but in the long run, it's the only way to build something that lasts. Let me share a personal reflection. There was a period when I kept telling a friend, I'm fine, even though I wasn't. I didn't want to burden them. I thought I was protecting the friendship. But over time, my distance grew, my energy changed, and they noticed. One day, I finally broke down and admitted, I've been struggling, and I didn't want to tell you because I was afraid it would change how you saw me. And do you know what happened? Instead of walking away, they leaned closer. That honesty deepened our connection. It taught me something simple yet profound. People can't love you fully if you're not honest about who you really are. So here's a question worth sitting with. In your closest relationships, are you showing up as your true self, or as the version of you that you think is safe? If it's the latter, then what you're offering isn't intimacy, it's performance. And performance may entertain, but it cannot sustain love. Buddhism reminds us, mindfulness in relationships means noticing when we are tempted to hide behind a mask. And compassion means giving ourselves, and others, the courage to show up as we are. It doesn't mean blurting out every thought without care. It means speaking truth with kindness, with the intention to heal, not to harm. That balance, truth and compassion, is the foundation of any enduring relationship. Let's be honest, honesty is not always comfortable. Sometimes it feels like standing naked in front of someone, with all your flaws exposed. But isn't that what true connection is? To be seen fully, and still loved? When we choose honesty, we are not only honoring the relationship, we are also freeing ourselves. Because carrying lies, even small ones, is exhausting. They weigh on the heart. They make eye contact difficult. They create distance where closeness is meant to be. Think again about that story of the two friends. Their relationship didn't break because of the lie itself. It broke because of the silence that followed. But when one of them finally spoke the truth, even if it was messy, it allowed trust to be reborn. That's the paradox of relationships. Honesty may hurt in the moment, but it heals in the long run. Dishonesty may soothe in the moment, but it wounds in the long run. Here's a simple metaphor. A relationship without honesty is like a house built on sand. It may look beautiful for a while, but when the storm comes, it collapses. A relationship rooted in honesty is like a house built on rock. It may not be perfect, but it stands strong through the storms. So, what relationships in your life might be waiting for your honesty? Maybe it's a friend you've grown distant from. Maybe it's a partner you've been hiding a part of yourself from. Maybe it's a family member with whom you've avoided a difficult conversation. What would it look like to step into that truth? Not with blame, but with openness. Because here's the closing reflection I want to leave with you. Honesty is not just about words. It's about presence. It's about being someone who others can look at, straight in the eyes, and know there is nothing hidden. Sparkles are clear, steady gaze only exists between people who no longer need to hide from each other. That's the kind of honesty that doesn't just repair relationships. It transforms them. We've walked together through many reflections on honesty, how it shapes our actions, our relationships, our courage, and even our healing. And now, as we come to this closing chapter, I want to leave you with one final image. Imagine honesty as a mirror. When you first look into it, the surface might be cloudy, smudged with fear, with pride, with the little disguises we've worn to get by in life. But here's the truth. Every time we dare to be honest, truly honest, it's like wiping that mirror clean. Little by little, the reflection becomes clearer. Until one day, you can look into it without flinching. And what you see is not shame, not guilt, not the need to hide, but a face lit by freedom. That's the gift of honesty. There's a saying I love. The honest person fears no gaze, because in their eyes already lives an open sky. Think about that. Most of us spend so much energy worried about what others will think if they see through us. But if we've chosen to live with honesty, then there's nothing to fear, because there's nothing to hide. Honesty doesn't make you perfect. It makes you real. And reality, no matter how cracked, messy, or unfinished, is always stronger than illusion. When you meet someone truly honest, you feel it right away. Their presence is calm, grounded. Their words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they're true. You can look into their eyes and feel the vastness of a clear sky, open, transparent, limitless. And here's the beautiful part, that clarity doesn't just serve them. It becomes a light for everyone they touch. Their honesty gives others permission to be honest too. It's contagious in the best way possible. So when we say, honesty is a mirror, it's not just a mirror for ourselves. It reflects into the world, reminding others that they too can live with nothing to hide. But let me ask you this. How often do we actually dare to polish that mirror? It takes courage to admit, I was wrong. It takes strength to say, I don't know. It takes tenderness to confess, I'm afraid. Yet every time we do, the mirror grows clearer. And every time we refuse, another layer of dust builds up. So the choice is ours. Live with a clouded reflection, or live with the freedom of clarity. Looking back at this whole journey we've shared, from honesty in thought, in speech, in action, in relationships, we've seen that honesty is never just a moral rule. It is a way of being that transforms everything it touches. It transforms how we work. It transforms how we love. It transforms how we see ourselves. It is the ground from which peace and trust can grow. Now, as we close this chapter on honesty, I want to plant a seed for the next part of our journey. Because honesty, as powerful as it is only one side of the path. The other is humility. If honesty is a mirror that reflects truth, then humility is what keeps us from staring at that mirror too long. Humility reminds us, this truth is not just about me. It is bigger than me. In Buddhist wisdom, humility is the soil in which wisdom takes root. It keeps the heart soft, the eyes clear, and the ego light. It is what allows honesty to shine without becoming harsh. Because let's face it, honesty without humility can become arrogance. But honesty paired with humility? That's when it becomes beauty. So in the next video, we are going to explore Sparkle's humility, the beauty that lasts. We'll look at why humility makes the gaze of an honest person shine even brighter, and how this quiet, often overlooked virtue might just be the secret ingredient to a life of peace, connection, and wisdom. But for now, let me leave you with this. Honesty is a mirror. The more you clean it, the clearer it becomes. The honest heart fears no gaze, because in its eyes already stretches an endless sky. And when you walk with that kind of clarity, both for yourself and for others, you'll find that the world feels less heavy, and life begins to open in ways you never imagined. So, my friend, may your mirror always shine, and may your sky always stay wide and clear. See you in the next chapter, where we'll discover the timeless beauty of humility.